So we are off. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on Livestream Insiders. And for the first time in 2017, we have summertime. We have daylight here in London town, which is really good to have. So I've got the sun not quite streaming through the window in front of me, but it is getting to be dusk. But it's really nice to know that summer not too far away across Western Europe. And Krishna, welcome. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Well, what would it be like on a Sunday without us being together? I have to say happy Mother's Day to everybody in Ireland and the UK and other countries where you celebrate Mother's Day. So I hope you've had a good one. But yes, we're back on kilter in terms of our time difference, and really appreciate those of you who are joining us from wherever you are in the globe. I know we've got people who regularly watch and are part of our community here who are actually here from China over to the US as well. So here on Livestream Insiders, every single week, what we like to do is cover the latest tools, technologies and tips, including case studies, in just 30 minutes, hence the bell at the beginning of the hour. And so Peter and I collaborate. We put together the best news stories for you that you can actually apply to your organization. So I'm going to hand it over to Peter to get us off with the first one, which unfortunately, a little bit like last week's episode, is not actually good news that we're starting off with, but it's just about the power of how live video can be used in terms of a breaking news story.
Absolutely. So we have got updates to some of the big platforms which you may have heard about over the last few days. So we've got the latest in the next 30 minutes from the last 7 days. And of course, it was during the course of the week that certainly here in London, we were dramatically affected by news that went around the world. Those attacks on the Mother of Parliaments, as they call it, at the Houses of Parliament at Westminster. Well, we're not going to talk specifically about that news story, but we are going to talk very briefly at the start of the show about some of the stats that came from it. And there was quite a bit of criticism that came for Al Jazeera, or more specifically Al Jazeera's viewers, because of a live stream they did. Now, I didn't see a huge number of live streams by individuals, but I did see a lot of live streams by CNN and Al Jazeera, and of course my very good friends at the BBC as well, and some terrific stats that were coming out of that, but also, as I say, some criticism for one or two of those live streams, and that one from Al Jazeera specifically, because during the course of Wednesday's attack in London, several screenshots of that live stream were sent around the world, and they did go a little bit kind of viral because some Twitter users honed in on the fact that some of the audience on the Facebook Lives reacted to the streaming of what was going on around Parliament Square with the smiling face emoji or the heart emoji, and that really did upset quite a few people. And I suppose you might say the fertile imagination of some thought that that meant that the whole of the Muslim world was laughing at what was unfolding at the northern end of Westminster Bridge, which of course left 4 people dead and several other people fighting for their life. Well, Al Jazeera has been rather slighted by this as well. They might be very concerned. So they have commissioned a report which was published this week on aljazeera.com and their editor's blog page on that. And they did a little bit of digging, which I thought would be particularly interesting because the news story was obviously of worldwide importance and interest. They were very concerned, and they discovered several things, which I'm just going to talk through briefly, 3 or 4 top points. So they had 5,200 total reactions on that particular live stream that caused so much interest. So 5,200 total reactions. The laugh and heart emojis totaled just 280, so reasonably small percentage. But then they looked into the laugh and heart emojis which were sent on the BBC and the Sky News and the CNN Facebook Live coverage of the same event, and found that they were pretty similar. Percentage-wise, that average ratio was about 5%. They also made the point that, of course, one person can just continue to press or tap the screen and send out a continuous stream of emojis of that particular sort. So not necessarily coming from a large number of people, although it's difficult to actually ascertain how many people were sending that 5%. And of course, as I make clear in my book, what does the emoji actually mean? That smiley face, for example, does that mean I'm loving your coverage, or I'm loving what's happened? Could be two different things. And even more so with the heart, do I love what has happened, or am I sending my love to the people who have been affected? So couple of points, and that report on aljazeera.com/blog/editors blog went on to say that actually these messages, these emoticons, weren't necessarily coming from the same country. They looked and saw that the people who were using them came from the UK, Kenya, and Sweden. So not specific to one particular country or one particular part of the world or one particular area where you might consider there could be sympathies for the attacker and what he had done. So therefore, that report from Al Jazeera concluded that to make the leap of faith about a viewer's religion is pretty implausible, because of course that kind of detail is not available to the streamer or certainly anybody else who is looking and trying to dig down for that data. So I thought that was quite interesting to look and see that that news story, which, as I say, went around the world, and how one particular social media team spent several hours kind of digging around to find some stats after some criticism of their particular live stream of that coverage. And on a slightly different note, but still staying with the Westminster attacks, there were some really interesting stats that were coming out, certainly from the BBC. They did a 4-hour live broadcast on Facebook, streaming pictures that were coming into the corporations. So they were just streaming the TV network broadcast coverage, but they were streaming other things. And as you can see from that visual there, they were commenting that 39,000 comments, 100,000 shares, 6.5 million views of 10 seconds plus that you can see there, and more than usual with the sound on as well. A huge percentage, which is really quite surprising. In fact, pretty evenly split. As you can see there, sound on 43%, sound off 57%. And I'm guessing that's really unusual because, of course, in that kind of situation, unless you wanted the actual update, you could actually tell quite a lot from the visuals themselves. So I thought that was particularly good. Also because there were actual strap lines or Astons or lower thirds or captions, whatever you want to call them, actually on the screen as well, as you could see from that particular visual that we just had up there. That breaking news at the bottom of the screen was giving you a visual text update about what was actually happening. So really, really interesting. That news from Al Jazeera, how they dug down into their analytics, the stats from the BBC, plus lots of other UGC content on the day and afterwards as well. So user-generated content, people who've been in the area at the time. Krishna, I didn't see many periscopes or Facebook Lives from bystanders, from members of the public. I looked on the map. I couldn't see any either before the attacks in that area or soon after at the police cordons or anything like that. I was really surprised that none of the 5,000 people who were corralled into Westminster Cathedral and Westminster Hall, MPs and staff, members of the public and school tour groups, I was really surprised that I didn't see any of them periscoping or Facebook living or Twitter living. I was really surprised at that. And in fact, when the news organisations got some of those people on the phone to talk to, it was just on their mobile phone. So I don't know whether there was perhaps some crackdown on how much they could show. I don't know. That could have been something for security reasons and for security implications. That may well be it. So 3 or 4 kind of user notes and case studies from that event in London on Wednesday.
One of the things I did see, Peter, that was of interest to me in terms of crisis management communications was the fact that the police actually did a stream of their own of actually the news release and the update. So you had all of the microphones, including the phones in front of them and the recorders to record that content, but they actually did their own stream as well, which for me just goes back to reinforcing the opportunity that live video gives you as an organization, not to rely on just what's reported in the news, but to get your own story, because of course some of that content may not be, put out in full. It will be edited for whatever news channel it's going out on. So I thought that was interesting. And somebody asked me the question because they didn't see it live, and I was teaching a program to some PR professionals and communication professionals, and they just said, "Oh, I presume they got a great angle." I said, "Well, actually, it wasn't the angle because they still went face on to the news organization, but they still had good access." And so, it was a sideways broadcast, but that really didn't matter. It was him on camera, and I was interested to see that on Periscope. But you're right, in terms of when you have a situation like that happened, there could have been some briefing, there could have been something that happened around, whether people could get access to be able to share that, and of course the security reasons as well. Horrific situation, but interesting to see how live communications have been used to actually support it.
And of course, our thoughts and prayers to everyone that was caught up in that situation. If you're watching, as I know lots of people are from elsewhere around the world, London was not in lockdown at all. It was a very small area which was closed off for less than a day, and everyone went around about their business. But obviously, being someone that lives in London, I'm particularly concerned. It's also someone that's going to be going up to London to work at the BBC over the next 3 or 4 days as well. But as I say, I'm sure you'll join in with me in sending best wishes to those who are caught up and the families of those who lost their lives.
And I should say thank you, because we actually had some people reach out to us who are viewers and are actually living outside of the UK or Ireland, and therefore is not as close to what was going on, who actually reached out to us to say, "Are you okay, Krishna and Peter?" And so thank you for reaching out to us, and we really appreciate that. I should also say a big thank you as well in terms for those of you who've shared the stream today. We really appreciate you doing so. So if you just joined us for the first time here on Livestream Insiders, every single Sunday at this same time, we go live with the latest live video news, live audio news, case studies and technology that's actually been coming out in the course of this last week. So today we've actually been just talking about some of the statistics related to actually the reporting of the Westminster attack. And you can find all of the links that we talk about already curated for you. If you look at the notes associated with the stream, you'll be able to go through and find all the things we're talking about, plus many, many more articles besides on the topic of live video, and in fact some social business content as well, which is what I get involved in. So let's have a look at the next story. And in fact, this goes back to something that we actually talked about back in January, and it's to do with Facebook Live. So you might recall that we actually covered here on Livestream Insiders that we could actually go live from our desktop. And it's been very patchy about who's been able to access this. Now, a friend of mine actually reached out to me this week, said she's had access to it since October last year, and I know other people who have. I've had access to this from January, and we wrote an article about it, and we covered it here on Livestream Insiders. But there was a later update that's happened and been announced this week from Facebook. So this might be of interest to you if you have a profile, if you have a business page, if you want to live stream into an event, if you want to live stream into a group. All of these different platforms, you can now do so. It's now should be available for all of us to be able to use right the way across from our desktop. Now, one thing to watch out for, and I'm just going to share a quick screenshot here. One thing to be aware of, for you to find this, now I have to admit I have not checked on Internet Explorer, but this is not available if you're on Firefox, in my experience. To be able to see this, to be able to go live from your page directly, or your profile, or your group, or your event, or in fact to a friend's timeline from desktop, you need to be using the Chrome browser. And what you'll find is, if you're like me on one of my pages, I've got lots of different apps. So you have to click down to see more, to be able to see the live button. The significant changes happen now, though, is not only is there ability for all of us to be able to do this, but we also have the ability that you no longer have to use the live API to use third-party tools. What do I mean by that? Streaming tools that some of you might be used to. Maybe you've got friends, or maybe yourself as a gamer, and you're used to streaming to platforms like Twitch. You might be using platforms such as OBS Project. You might be using a tool like I use called vMix. You may be using platforms like Wirecast, and there's many, many other tools that you could use now. And what happens now is you don't have to go through the live API. In fact, in the article that I wrote associated with this, I actually put a link to where you go to actually start your live broadcast. So what does that mean is that, for example, if you're running an event, you might actually want to have this set up, bring in multiple cameras, for example, do it from a desktop, and you can actually have multimedia come in. So we bring in images here. We don't tend to bring in video content, but you could bring in images, you could bring in video content, you could have your lower thirds, you could have your agenda all come up using this new approach. So I think that's of interest, I think, for many people. Some people will still want to go live with their mobile device. Other people like us will want to go live with other third-party tools. But do have a look at that if live video from desktop is of interest to you. And as I said, I've written an article about it. It's in the links, and you'll find other resources there, including the link to actually where you go live, which I suggest that you might want to also bookmark in terms of being able to use those third-party tools. But otherwise, just go into desktop, go onto Chrome, and look out for that live button to be able to go live from your desktop.
So that's an update to Facebook, which is pretty much what we covered previously. It's just kind of been extended, as is this topic as well, because previously we've talked about Periscope and the Periscope producer availability. So that again allows you to have the lower thirds and bringing in other cameras and gaming and GoPros and all the rest of it, and pre-recorded video and so on. Well, it's the 11th birthday of Twitter, and they have given everyone a bit of a birthday present for that. So they have announced the ability for broadcasters to use professional cameras and editing software to go live with video into Twitter. So that means that you're not just having to use the Periscope app to do that kind of high-end TV-like production. So that is particularly interesting. So you don't actually have to broadcast via Periscope. Now, it's left us here at Livestream Insiders a little bit confused and a little bit concerned about, therefore, Periscope is becoming less and less relevant, isn't it? Because it seems to me that the whole kind of field of Twitter and Periscope, as we know, is owned by Twitter, the whole landscape is getting a little bit confusing. So let's just think this through. So what have we got? We've got Twitter Live, which is high-end live video streamed directly to Twitter. Okay, so that's one part of the offer that they've got. What else have we got? We've got Twitter Video, which can be high-end video uploaded to Twitter that isn't live. Okay, so that's two kind of offers there. Then we've got Periscope, which is the live video taken via the Periscope app. So we've got that, and then we've got Periscope Producer as well, which is the high-end live video streamed directly to the Periscope app, which can be shared on Twitter as well. It's very confusing, isn't it? And certainly when I was writing the book, having to think very carefully about what circumstances I'm talking about Periscope and what circumstances I'm talking about Twitter, and the different combinations of what you can do in each of the apps under what circumstance. And you know what? It was confusing to write. I'm sure it's going to be a little bit confusing to read. And I'm sure people, when they do it, will go, oh, whoa, enough already. I'm just going to go on this Facebook Live thing because that's much more straightforward. I understand it.
Say, Peter, you're talking about Twitter there and video. I have to just come in here to say there's at least 3 ways that you can upload video to Twitter. You can upload it just in your tweets, let's say on your phone. You can upload it through Twitter ads.twitter.com. And you can go, actually, what's been released to everybody as of this last week or so is actually Twitter Studio. So you've got at least 3 ways to send content to Twitter. No wonder people get a little bit confused.
Absolutely. And you've got your 140 seconds that you can do as well. And if you go via Periscope, that's going to potentially be shown on Twitter too. It really is confusing, and I can't help thinking that actually, let's just down Periscope. Let's just clear up the whole thing. It's confusing, and I'm sure that is not helping the Twitter brand at all, because it is a confusing landscape. But there you go. For our thoughts, if they're listening, Cave On this week quoted again as saying, you know what, Periscope's not going anywhere anytime soon. So updates to Facebook Live, updates to Periscope / Twitter, whichever we're going to call it. And also we've got some updates to Instagram as well, haven't we, Krishna?
I have, but I've got a quick question for you here. And I know we haven't got very much time. And I'd love to know from everybody who's watching, if you were to advise somebody about using Twitter video, right? So it's Twitter live video. So we're not talking about the high end in terms of you're a football team and so on like that. So in terms of those commercial arrangements with Twitter, if you were looking to stream, what would you tell them to do? Would you tell them just to go live from Twitter? Because we've talked about the fact of if you go live from Periscope, you get some other features, such as groups, such as privately. So if you were to advise somebody today who's new to live video, who wants to use it in terms of Twitter, would you actually tell them to go live from Periscope or Twitter? I'd love to know from our viewers what they would suggest. And what do you suggest, Peter, as the person who's writing the book?
You know what? It probably depends on what you're needing to do, doesn't it? How quickly you're wanting to do it. Whether whether you want a privacy option, whether you want people to be able to comment, and whether you want an actual channel where you can archive your programs after the fact and so on, or whether, that's one of the big things, isn't it? That if you actually go live through Twitter, once your video has gone, essentially that's gone. You can retweet it, but you've got no single place apart from tapping on the media button in your profile and then scrolling around and thinking, hold on, I think it was last September sometime. You can't actually find that video. But if you put it on Periscope, at least you've got some basic way of archiving, and you've got that search functionality with those different topics and the different hashtags and so on. However, you're absolutely right. It is quite confusing.
I guess you could always use Twitter mentions to curate your streams. And of course, there's also conversations going on this week about whether or not that Twitter is going to be introducing some paid-for tools in terms of, for example, a pro version of TweetDeck. More on that in other conversations. Let's look at actually other things that are happening in terms of live video on platforms, on social video platforms. And this is good news for some people who I know have been thinking about using a platform we've been talking about a certain number of times, which is Instagram. And the welcome update that came out for Instagram, I think for many people, is that now, yes, you can save your live video. Because as you know, if you do an Instagram live video, there actually is no archive, or has been no archive of it. So as soon as it ends, it ends. It's gone. Poof. It's disappeared. But as of now, once you do a live stream, you actually can save it. So you'll get a little notification. It'll say, do you want to save this? You need to do that immediately. Otherwise, you won't get a chance to do it afterwards. It will save to your camera roll, but do note that you don't, when you save it, get any of those comments that have been shared. Just like a Periscope update, when it was a Periscope live stream, I should say, if you do a live stream on Periscope, you can save it to your camera roll, but you actually don't preserve any of those comments that have come in from people. But that may make you think or rethink your use of Instagram, because I know lots of people would like to use it, but it's like, I don't want to just have disposable content. I know that there's some pieces that I'd like to share in other places, or I want to put it together as an archive for people to be able to see. So there's pros and cons always in terms of having content that disappears. But in this particular case, it's great to see that Instagram has, I'm sure they had lots of feedback on this, and now enables us to be able to do that in terms of save that to your camera roll, and then you can decide what you do with it thereafter.
And of course, one of the decisions that you may make is to then post it right back onto Instagram. So therefore, it could be pretty much archived your live feed, 5 minutes later. So that's a really good kind of clever get round. We're coming to the end of the show. Krishna, I'll leave you to have a review of some of the comments, because I know they're coming in, and I know you'd like to respond to those. I mentioned a few moments ago that it is Periscope's birthday week. There has been a message from Kayvon, who I mentioned, and he said, "We're forever living in a shrinking world, not a world truly getting smaller and smaller by the day, but one where over thousands of years," he says, "technology has impacted the world we live in today, making it easier than ever to travel the globe that we call home." He says, "In the last 2 years, we've explored more corners of this earth and met people with incredible stories from all over the globe without having to leave the comfort of our beds." Periscope, I don't think I've ever periscoped from my bed, but there you go. Periscope has given us the incredible ability to travel anywhere at any time from the palm of our hands. It's taken us to new heights and shown us views we've never seen before with drones. It's put us at the heart of action with GoPros. It's even got a spelling mistake in that sentence, Kayvon, but never mind. It's even put the power into the viewer's hands to explore the world from every angle with 360 live broadcasting. We live in a shrinking world, and boy did Periscope just making it a lot smaller in the last 2 years. So happy birthday, Periscope. Here's to the future. What do you reckon? Is he going to live to see happy birthday number 3?
Well, we'll have to take bets on that one. Just in terms of wrapping up the show, there's lots of things we haven't had a chance to talk about. How the Periscope API has been introduced into lots of things, including into the Mevo camera. How Grabyo has actually introduced cloud production in terms of for your live streams, which I think has been rolled out to a number of their key customers. We haven't talked about how we've got an update to vMix that's now available, vMix 19, which actually now allows you to bring people in from different locations just through a web link. You don't have to have other third-party tools like Zoom, or you don't have to have other tools, for example, like Skype, to be able to do that. They're just some of the things we haven't talked about, but you can be sure they're actually all in the curation that we've got ready for you. Just in terms of actually comments, thank you so much for being here today. And I know that I've been having some problems actually seeing all the comments here in terms of on my second device. So if I miss you now, I'm actually going to come back to the stream later on to watch out. But firstly, we appreciate you being here. Secondly, thank you so much for sharing the stream. We hope that you've actually found it of assistance. A couple of specific comments I just want to mention. Stephen is asking about where would he start in terms of on Twitter live video. Yeah, well, that goes back to the question we had, wasn't it? In terms of Twitter live video, remember, in terms of for that big production, that's really with commercial arrangements there. So in terms of to go live with Twitter, actually you just need to be on Twitter, on your app, and click the go live button. But as we just round off here with Sabrina, who actually does a lot of content on Periscope, and she actually joined me previously for a stream all about how she's been using it. And she said if people don't have a Periscope account, they can definitely start going live from Twitter. Yes, and they can retweet, but yes, she would suggest that use Periscope for more features and access to the community. Really good point there, Sabrina, in terms of access to the community. And as we talked about, you get lots more features as well. But that's what we've got for this week. Peter, why don't you tell people about how they can find us in the future? Because I heard that little alarm go off for our 30 minutes.
Absolutely, yeah, we value your minutes, we value your megs. That's why we always review the last 7 days in 30 minutes or thereabouts anyway. Sometimes we get a little bit carried away, so do forgive us. However, you can get in touch with us during the course of the week. We're at LS Insiders on Twitter, or it's at Krishna Day, or it's at Tweeter Stuart. See what I did there. And also you can follow us on Facebook as well. And you can join us in 7 days, where once again we'll review the week's news live streaming wise, all the main apps, the main platforms, and some case studies and some stats and some facts. I may even mention the book as well. You never know. Psst, out in September if everything goes well. But between now and then, thanks so much indeed for the loan of your eyes and your ears. And wherever you are on planet Earth, have a great week ahead.